We will begin our program in just a few minutes. Hello to all of you. This program will be pre-recorded as we welcome our Dean, George Daly.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2022 Howard Dorsey Still Lecture and the Diversity Awards ceremony. I'm George Daly, Dean of Harvard Medical School. I'm delighted to join you today. We're here to honor the remarkable individuals who are the recipients of this year's Harvard Medical School Diversity Awards, while at the same time honoring the legacies of Drs. Edwin Howard, Thomas Dorsey, and James Still. These men were the first African-American graduates of Harvard Medical School. Dr. Howard and Dr. Dorsey graduated in 1869, and Dr. Still graduated in 1871. I'm grateful that we have an opportunity to celebrate their lives and also to have the chance to learn and take inspiration from their journeys. We'll hear more about their stories shortly from Dr. Joan Reed, the Harvard Medical School Dean for Diversity and Community Partnership. And now it's an honor to welcome this year's Howard Dorsey Still Lecturer, Dr. Andre L. Churchwell. Now, please note that I have purposely removed my tie because I cannot begin to compete with Dr. Churchwell's sartorial splendor, which is one of his trademarks. Dr. Churchwell is Vanderbilt University's Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, as well as Vanderbilt's Chief Diversity Officer. He is also the Levi Watkins Jr. MD Chair for Achievements in Diversity and Inclusion, and a professor of medicine, professor of radiology and radiological sciences, and professor of biomedical engineering at the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. And I am also very proud to note that Dr. Churchwell is a distinguished alum of Harvard Medical School. Additionally, inspiration can certainly be drawn today from this year's HMS Diversity Award recipients. Not only has their work and commitment brought meaningful and impactful change to the Harvard Medical School and Harvard School of Dental Medicine communities, they have also shown us how diversity and inclusion enriches all of our lives. Diversity and inclusion remains our most important goals, and here at Harvard Medical School and Harvard School of Dental Medicine, we are committed to this work. I do believe that thanks to the dedication and hard work of many in this virtual room, we have made significant strides and we will continue to make progress. It is not just a matter of achieving fairness, but of ensuring inclusive excellence in all the areas we touch: excellence in education, excellence in patient care, and excellence in research. Diversity, inclusion, and excellence go hand in hand. They are prerequisites for world leadership and essential for transforming culture. And we see that right here at HMS and HSDM. It is now my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Dr. Dean Reed. And thank you again for joining us today. And my sincere thanks and congratulations to the 2022 Diversity Award recipients.
Thank you, Dean Daly, for your welcome and for allowing me to be part of an institution that not only realizes the value and importance of diversity and inclusion, but acknowledges individuals who've been willing to lead us in recognizing and valuing all. I'm going to start with a few housekeeping notes regarding this webinar. The chat function is not available during the presentation. However, it will be available during the award ceremony portion of the program. Additionally, your microphones are muted, and that we ask that you use a Q&A function for questions during our guest speaker. This is live closed captioned, and that will be available after today's session. And at the end of the program, there'll be some poll questions. Please stay on. It's about a minute to answer those poll questions. This webinar recording will be on our DICP, Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Partnership website. And now I want to turn to our program and the framing for today. In 2004, Dr. Nora Nersessian, Harvard Medical School's former Associate Dean for Alumni Affairs and Special Projects, published a book called Against All Odds, which covered a span of more than 150 years of African-American presence at Harvard Medical School and brought to life true accounts of Black men and women in medicine, their struggles, their determination, and their triumphs. Included in this book were the stories of Doctors Howard, Dorsey, and Still. Their stories may provoke a range of emotions, and ultimately, the book is really about celebration. After graduating in 1869, Dr. Edwin Howard practiced medicine in Charlestown, South Carolina for a year, and then moved to Philadelphia, where he was instrumental in establishing the Frederick Douglass Memorial Hospital in 1895. It was the only hospital for African Americans in Philadelphia. He then went on to establish the Mercy Hospital in 1905 because of his feelings that, and here's a quote from Dr. Nersessian's book, quote, "The present hospital, the Frederick Douglass, having assumed the character of a privately managed, narrow, unprogressive institution, fails to meet the objectives for which it was organized. An opportunity for Negro physicians to get the incalculable benefits of hospital practice, which other hospitals had denied them. Also to train our girls in nursing, as well as giving our people additional hospital facilities," end quote. A leader in his time. Dr. Thomas Dorsey was the first student of African descent to be called and receive the MD degree from Harvard Medical School in 1869. Unfortunately, information about Dr. Dorsey's life is fragmented. We do know from two sources, however, that he spent much of his life after graduation in Washington, D.C., and although no records can really be found, he would have graduated in a year after Reconstruction was launched, and having settled in D.C., Dr. Dorsey would have witnessed the founding of Howard University and its College of Medicine, Freedmen's Hospital, and the first medical association for Black physicians in Washington, D.C. Dr. James Still, who graduated with honors from Harvard Medical School in 1871, practiced in Boston after graduation. According to the Central Record of Medford, New Jersey, where Dr. Still was born, he may have chosen Harvard, and I quote, "because it was located in abolitionist Boston, possibly with less barriers to his admissions," end quote. Another quote from the 1895-96 publication of the Harvard Graduate Magazine described Dr. Still's practice as, quote, "he took up his practice in Boston, chiefly among the colored people who he treated more for the love of his profession rather than for what it paid him," end quote. Dr. Still was the first and at the time the only African-American elected to the Boston School Board. And through these efforts, an opening was first made for African-American teachers in Boston schools. In addition, Dr. Still was himself a spokesperson for civil rights and was a nephew of William Still, a conductor on the Underground Railroad, who actually authored the self-published book, The Underground Railroad, in 1872, a year after James Still graduated from Harvard Medical School. In paying tribute to these three amazing men in a named lectureship, we are here today to celebrate the 2022 Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award and the Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award recipients. A little bit about these individuals. Dr. Harold Amos was the Maud and Lillian Presley Professor of Microbiology and Molecular Genetics at Harvard Medical School. He joined the faculty as an instructor in 1954, becoming the first African-American department chair in 1968. He was also the first African-American individual to earn a doctoral degree from the Harvard Medical School Division of Medical Sciences in 1952. But beyond this, Dr. Amos worked tirelessly to support individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds who were committed to developing careers in academic medicine. Not only did he encourage these individuals, he was also known for wielding his influence so that universities would accept them into their academic programs. And now I'd like to share with you a short video about Dr. Harold Amos.
You know, he was such a humble man. He never would talk about me as the first African American who did my PhD here, who served as faculty member, who was chair of a department. Never.
Full scholarship to Springfield College in the mid-1930s, unique in its own right, in the service, returned here to get his PhD in the medical sciences, and then establish his own prominent track record in research, but always cultivating students, cultivating young faculty behind himself.
And he was very much somebody who wanted to be proactive about the opportunity that was offered to other people in minorities, very much so.
It was really the medical people who were very strongly opposed to bringing in the African American students to the medical school, with the argument being that we were going to bring people who were not qualified to the medical school.
And I remember there was a very serious debate. Some people were very upset or tried to water it down. And Harold stood up and very gently responded very differently, and that sort of turned to some extent turned the tide in the discussions.
He was the most wonderful gentleman, civilized human being that had a great heart, and his heart was in the right place.
He was in so many ways, and another extraordinary personages within the history of Harvard medicine, a professor's professor, somebody who was also kind, committed, a researcher, an insightful individual, forever looking out for students. So all of his extraordinary life, he was called a jewel in this world.
It's very important that whoever gives the award makes sure that the recipient knows who Harold was. He was a great human, and you can be absolutely honored by the fact that this great human is the name of the award that you receive, and I would hope that you can, regardless of who you are, you can try to emulate that humanity.
Miss Sharon P. Claiborne began working at Harvard Medical School's financial aid office in 1981 as a staff assistant. Over the years, she received many awards for her untiring attention to students, and in fact, the school's class of 1999 presented her with an award in, quote, recognition of tireless dedication to the students of Harvard Medical School. She also received a 1998 YMCA Black Achievers Recognition Award for her commitment to service on behalf of young people and to help motivate and prepare them to pursue their educational and career goals. In addition, Sharon received the first annual Dean's Award for Community Service for her work producing Good News, a 2-hour gospel program on the MIT radio station WMBR 88.1. I'm now delighted to introduce today's special guest, Dr. Andre Churchwell. In May 2020, Dr. Churchwell was named Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer for Vanderbilt University. He's a professor of medicine, cardiology, professor of radiology and radiologic sciences, professor of biomedical engineering, and in 2005 was named the Walter R. Murray Jr. Distinguished Alumnus of the Association of Vanderbilt Black Alumni for lifetime achievements in personal, professional, and community arenas. Vanderbilt named him the Levi Watkins Jr. MD Chair for Achievements in Diversity and Inclusion in 2015. He was a graduate of Vanderbilt School of Engineering and received his medical degree, as Dean Daly said, from Harvard. That was in 1979, and later completed his training, internship, residency, and fellowships at Emory, and was the first African-American chief resident at Grady Memorial Hospital, many firsts. In 2010, he was a recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award at Vanderbilt University School of Engineering. and he, along with his brothers Kevin and Keith, received the 2011 Trumpet Award of Medicine. He's named to the American Institute of Medical and Biomedical Engineering for his work, and he's received the Vanderbilt University Pioneer in Diversity Award. He's an associate editor for the Biomedical Engineering Society's internationally recognized Cardiovascular Engineering and Technology Journal. Time won't allow me to mention all of his many awards and accolades. Needless to say, Dr. Churchwell is incredibly accomplished. And with that, Dr. Churchwell, welcome back to Harvard Medical School.
Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you, thank you. You know, when I hear those kind of accolades, I always hope that there's a pipeline up to heaven. I'm sure Kevin, my brother, feels the same. I'm really thankful to get a chance to speak at your, it's always a great opportunity to speak at your alma mater. I was looking forward to standing and looking at Building A. I'll have to come up during the summer, I think. I'll visit you then, Joan. But I was asked to give a talk, and I thought about a number of things, and I thought I would land in the area of medical humanities with a little bit of overlap into my area of biomedical engineering. So creativity and applied physics is kind of a talk I give pretty much annually to the senior design class of the biomedical engineering students here at Vanderbilt. They asked me to do this because it's right before they choose their design projects, and they collect together as a team to do this. And I feel as part of the faculty that they need a little stimulus around the fact that it's not just all about mathematics and differential equations and computer simulation, that the creative part is equally important. And so as I put together this talk around right and left brain activity, how the right brain, metaphorically, and to some extent still correct, is where most of the seat of creativity and innovation resides. And the left brain, to a large extent, is where our deterministic thinking, our science, our physics, our math, our medicine resides. The corpus callosum, I finally understand after all these years from Harvard Med School neurobiology, is the connecting limb between those two hemispheres that allows them to crosstalk and allow those that really build their creative side to influence their day jobs in science and medicine, and vice versa. So I think it's important, and you see it showing up more and more in curricula, both in engineering schools and medical schools, to really embrace the concept of design thinking and the concept of right and left brain activity. So from my point of view, I'm going to use three models. If I give a little quick preamble, the talk will talk a little bit about creativity, its points of origin, kind of some of the disputes about it, some of the ideas about it. And then I'm going to land on three models or examples, oddly enough, two connected to Harvard Medical School. Thomas McMahon, the late Tom McMahon, who was my mentor during my senior year, my fourth year at Harvard Med School doing cardiovascular research. And I had the great opportunity to meet Arthur Guyton, the great Arthur Guyton, the physiologist from Mississippi, when he was giving some of the lectures here, visiting lectures at Harvard Med School, asked to come back by the fantastic team of cardiac physiologists working here at Harvard. But I thought I would begin with using myself as a little bit of a model, and hopefully you'll view it as a good model, as a way of how I've allowed the creative side of my brain to kind of be engaged and to listen to it openly and accept what it's telling me to do. And in doing so, it has influenced a lot of my career in medicine. Next slide. So you have to begin, unfortunately, seeing some things that I have drawn. So I got interested in art, full scale, whether it be writing poetry and art, around age 4 or 5. My dad, Robert Churchwell Sr., who was the first African-American to write on a Southern paper in the early 50s, was actually a closet artist, and he could sketch and he could actually do woodcuts, but he never really developed that fully. But as a young kid, 4 or 5, he would sit there and sketch the cartoons I was seeing on television for us. And it just stimulated me to start taking up the idea of drawing. So I began drawing, and these are some examples of things that I sketch, ranging from the Russian weightlifter to a lot of times learning how to sketch by going to art museums. And I strongly recommend to our students, go to art museums, please. They open the doors of perception and the windows of your mind to a lot of things that you may not have thought about. So in my 4 years at HMS from 75 to 79, I spent many a Saturday with my sketchbook at the Boston Fine Arts Museum just down the street, or at the Isabella Stewart Garner Museum. They were my master classes on how to sketch and draw by copying the great masters. And imitation is another form of creativity because you're doing it in your own hand. So you've got me sketching a horse. That was a Michelangelo exhibition in Nashville a few years ago, learning how to sketch horses. There was a John Singer Sargent exhibition a few years ago, and that's the young lady on the right. And of course, Marvel Comics are always close by. And of course, I always assumed the Hulk was a Harvard graduate. His diction was perfect, me am Hulk. And so he would grow from Bruce Banner to the Hulk. And then Frank Sinatra is always omnipresent in our family home as one of our great heroes of song. Next slide. So we take the backstory a little bit. There are other things I would sketch. There's oral and on paper. These are using Jack Kirby as a model. I really studied Jack Kirby like crazy, the great Marvel comic genius who, along with Stan Lee, created the Marvel comic universe as we know it. But Kirby created the figures. And I think it's important to recognize from a diversity point of view, his original name was Jacob Krutzenberg. He was a Russian Jew. Family immigrated from Russia. He was a young kid. And as he recognized he had great skill in drawing, and he went to, they lived in New York, he couldn't get a job with that last name, the Jewish name. So he changed his name to Jack Kirby and started drawing for Timely Comics, and the rest is history. Oddly enough, his buddy, who began writing the stories with him in Marvels, was named Stanley Lieber, another Jewish name, and from second generation family from Europe. Stan Lee had to change his name. So the dynamic, gifted coupling of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the Marvel comic universe. And so that's me honoring Kirby. And then one thing I do very often, I carry along, you hear me talk about Leonardo da Vinci here in a minute. I carry along a sketchbook with me all day. I have tons of these at home. My poor wife is dealing with this paper overload at home in the corners. Here I take notes on lectures or topics or things I have to deal with in terms of my day job as a vice chancellor, but you'll also see in there sketches. And so most of these things that you see in ink and pencil were sketches done during lectures or talks. The more finished ones were done during very boring talks. So I will not denote who were the lecturers to those, but the one on the right was a sketch during a talk, and it was an idea of Superman becoming a super lunch. But I think given the Man of Steel being invulnerable, the poor giant's going to lose his front teeth, I think. Next slide. So listen to those voices of creativity or of push, and also continue, always push yourself. We're in life is a, lifelong learning is what we learn about in medicine, but it's also lifelong learning about yourself and your skills and your aptitudes. And I would really recommend that we all look at that. I think there's a lot of people on the call, or students think that, God gave me this or that. Well, you don't know unless you explore. And so the self-exploration is really important. The sketch on the left is St. Patrick's. I drew from Fifth Avenue. And then I worked on my hands a lot. Hands are very complicated. So to learn how to sketch hands, I'm a lefty. You can see that's my right hand. And then of course there's Old Blue Eyes again that I sketched on his 100th birthday for an event. So this is kind of the backdrop, sketching, art, initially comic books, and then the Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo tabletop drawing books would show up and out of nowhere. My parents would order those, knowing my brothers and I wanted to sketch and learn more. We could learn more detailed anatomy from those drawings of Michelangelo and Leonardo, and we did. Next slide. Continuing to learn, continuing to grow. So the backstory was that, as I mentioned, and then the other part of the backstory was just Jack Kirby and just recognizing, even at a young age, how immensely talented this kinetic artist was. He drew two-dimensional sketches that looked like movies, like moving objects. So I began to recognize that there was something there on the side of creativity around eye-hand coordination and drawing, some visual intelligence that I had, hopefully a little bit more than the average bear, but some visual intelligence. And I just began to continue to explore. Click the next click there. And along the way, I kept pushing myself. I said, well, Dad, and one of his many lessons to us growing up as kids, the young men in the house, he would tell us about Sunday dress. I wanted you all to look appropriate. He being one of the greatest generation, they all knew about clothing and dress and style, from those 20-foot apparitions of Bill Bojangles on the screen or Gary Cooper on the silver screen. They knew all the rules and lessons of how to dress, the type of shirt to wear, the type of tie. And so when Dad began those instructions, once again, my brain began thinking about it in a more creative and a more kind of knowledge-based way to start learning more about dress. So I have a whole library at home on men's dress in the 20th century. And I began designing, so next slide, I began drawing and designing my own clothes. And I happened out of pure happenstance in New York to run into eventually a number of great friends in men's dress and men's fashion. Bruce Boyer, the great dean of men's writing for dress, who I met in New York. I met Alan Flusser, the great writer of books on men's dress. And I also, through Bruce, learned about Leonard Logsdale, a Savile Row tailor, who has now become an extraordinarily good friend, who has taken more money from my checkbook than my wife wants to acknowledge. And I'm wearing one of Lenny's suits here today, I might add. Well, the word got around as I wrote and began talking about dress around the country. I began getting asked to give lectures and to offer an opinion. What about that? Not just about cardiology and the latest drug for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, but Dr. Churchwell, what should men be wearing in fall 1994? And so a USA Today editor called me and sent a photographer to Nashville to take pictures and for me to give them some ideas about what men would be wearing. And so that began a series of opportunities over the years. To the right of that, Ruth Lafleur, the great style writer of the New York Times, called me about in 1999, what are men going to be wearing in fall of this year, Andre? So she invited me to New York and took pictures and listened to me go ad nauseum about what I thought about men's dress. Knowing a lot of the rules about dress, I could break them too and explain them. The bottom panel, Esquire magazine called a few years ago to include me in the 50 men in 50 states who look their best. The sad part is if you look at the other guys, some of these guys need a lot of work. The fellow on the left is wearing some type of abomination I can't really describe clearly, but it is a passion. It allows me to disengage from the work of Vice Chancellor in cardiology, but more importantly, once again, fueling the right brain with these ideas helps inform my day job. There is crosstalk. Top slide, I'm wearing a Prince of Wales check suit from the original fabric of 1928, the Duke of Windsor created. And they heard about this at RISD, and so Kate Urin, who's a curator at the Rhode Island School of Art and Design, had me come up to give a talk, and they took the suit off my back, literally, and put it on a mannequin that stayed there 6 months as part of an exhibit of men's dress in the 20th century, and had my suit with my shirt and tie next to the Prince of Wales, one of his tartan outfits. He's a pretty short little guy at 5'3", and me at the time 6'3". Pushing myself further, I decided, well, maybe I can learn and draw or engage in women's wear. So I sat down and drew a dress for my wife from scratch, found a tailor and fabric, and with my poor wife's help and tolerance with multiple fittings, this is the dress that was created. And it turns out she wore this to one of the few white tie events in this country, is the Swan Ball at a museum called Cheekwood. And during this event, it's a white tie event, the fashion experts in Nashville take pictures of what they think to be the top women's gowns of that particular day. And of the 4 gowns they chose this one, the one that I designed. The other 3 were from the usual suspects, Oscar de la Renta, Armani. When they asked us about this one, I said, they're not going to believe that your husband cardiologist designed this. Let's just tell them you got it at Saks. But I think, once again, push yourself. You don't know your limits. It will expand the world, your creative world, your sense of what you can do, the sense of what you can read and learn about. Outside of medicine, this is so important. Next slide. The creativity really abounds and helps you figure out what to do with some of the biggest problems you have in your day job. You can use that right brain creativity to come up with solutions. One of the people we're going to talk about is Tom McMahon, and Tom was a phenomenal biomedical engineering scientist, engineer here at Harvard in the Applied Physics Division. We'll talk about that. But he had a dual mind too, and one of the most greatest dual minds. Tom was a well-known, well-received fictional book writer, and a number of his books won book awards. And one of his last books was a book on Ira Foxglove. It was a fictional character he created, who was a scientist, but a creative scientist. And someone asked Foxglove in the book, how did he come up with ideas? And this is really Tom's maxim, I think. As far as I can tell, ideas always show up like that, absolutely free, and very often in a nearly final form. What you do have to do is test them with your education and with your experience to see whether they're any good. You can go to school or grow old learning how to test ideas. That takes hard work, but no one can teach you how to get them. They come from nothing. So where did creativity come from? Nothing. Comes out of the sky, as Tom would say. Next slide. So we're going to talk about creativity, and then we'll end with three models: Leonardo da Vinci, Arthur Guyton, and then Tom McMahon. And I'll talk more about them as we get to that part of the talk. We have to think about what is creativity. Well, showed up really in what we call the modern definition in '61 from your Indo-European root in Latin, creatio, or creates, make it grow, to grow your ideas, to grow your thinking. This comes from a great book I recommend from Robert Key Sawyer, who's a Washington University professor, a cognitive psychologist, on explaining creativity, the science of human innovation. And he makes a lot of really important points, and I'm going to use some of his ideas in this talk. And his day job is teaching and writing on this. His weekend job, he plays jazz piano around the bars in St. Louis. So he practices what he preaches here, the dual mind. Next slide. And he defined creativity in kind of two buckets: individualistic, and creativity is a new mental combination that is expressed in the world. That's his definition. That's his definition. So it's mostly little seeds what he calls little seeds of creativity that occur all the time. Modifying a recipe, modifying the way you find your way home. But there are exceptions where the little seeds can be giant seeds. Einstein, with his theory of relativity, or the lady or man who discovered fire way back in the day. They changed the course of human history. Then there's a sociocultural definition that's more a combination or team-based. The Manhattan Project would be a great example. Silicon Valley Google would be another example, where bright minds come together that change society, change the course of humankind as a group thinking project. Next slide. For creativity, I went through a lot of reviews on this, and you will find all kinds of definitions or the origins. I put it in this kind of thought model that I have: Plato, Aristotle at the top, the Renaissance on this left, and Industrial Revolution on the right side, and art and science being blended in some recent ideas. But it's multiple definitions. Creativity can be viewed as an epiphany. They come from dreams. We used to say they come from your muse or your muses. They come from imitation, me copying Kirby, but creating something that looks more like what Andre would do. The general imagination. Aldous Huxley and Tim O'Leary thought they could take drugs to open the doors of perception to be more creative. I would not recommend that to anyone here. And then we do know that savants have less filtering. So anything that leads to less filtering in your brain, more ideas can come in and therefore more output. So savants and people with autistic behavioral issues are oftentimes super creative people. Then there's being able to create on a time schedule. My dad, as a writer, had to create something every day new. Or when you're a fashion person like Ralph Lauren, we'll talk about, every season you have to come up with something new. Or the Silicon Valley folks come up with things new. So there's all kinds of ways to think about creativity and its origin, or how you would think about it or define it or explain it. One fascinating thing is that right before the High Renaissance, crafts were just thought to be things you just got somebody to do. It was not viewed in any kind of high level of art. As a matter of fact, chamber music was really the noise that you hear in the elevator when you're going up, the music they play just to have background music. Chamber music was written for the wealthy Italians to be played upstairs while they're having a party downstairs. No one's paying any attention to it. But then in the Renaissance, it became the true appreciation of art standing alone as something that was divine and also inspired. And led to the rock stars that we know of, Leonardo and Michelangelo and the like. Next slide. But there's tensions around creativity, and it always is around creativity and innovation. Can you have a great idea by itself, or does it have to lead to a product? And that's always a part of the tension. And there's a tension between arts and science. What's the worth of a new John Coltrane riff that you heard on jazz saxophone versus a new catheter that some guy in Medtronics has designed. I think they all have equal value. I am not one to place one in some hierarchy over another one. They all have great value because they add to the body of new human knowledge. Next slide. One example I want to share with you about the creative process is when I began encountering my colleagues in New York in men's fashion, I met John Vazone, who was the purple label designer for Ralph Lauren for 20 years. And John took me up into the creative areas, the creative layers of Ralph Lauren, where they come up with the ideas for the spring line for men or the spring line for women or the fall line. And it's very mechanistic and it's creating on a timeline, but it's still fascinating. So they have these large white rooms, floor to ceiling, that Ralph Lauren brings the team in. He says, I'm thinking this spring, 1930s Paris. Go to our warehouses on the Hudson. They have these huge warehouses full of all these furniture, clothing, all the stuff you see in the Ralph Lauren stores comes from these giant warehouses where they've got things from estate sales. And so they bring clothing back to the 1930s and clothe mannequins, and the artists draw the cafe scene on the wall. They bring in, and they get the inspiration by walking around and drinking wine from the 1930s. And that's how they come up with the idea of the new line. And they tweak, it's almost like engineering. They tweak a collar width a little narrower, a little wider. They shorten the pants a half inch or more. They add cuffs or take them off. Very functional, very almost in a way mathematical, but still, once again, imitation, creating something new, taking something small, taking two different things, coming up with something new. They call it the creation room. In Italy, il progettista is the same word for a designer or an engineer, which kind of makes sense as you think about men's dress in this fashion. Next slide. And there are different models of learning. So you could be the apprentice, like Leonardo in the School of Verrocchio. His father placed him in under the great maestro, Verrocchio, painter and sculptor. Or now we have schools, you get formal degrees. Which one's better? Once again, I think it's person specific. I'm all self-taught. I think if you give me too much learning, it'll probably ruin me. I don't know. But I think there's certainly multiple ways you go about this. Leonardo, most of what he did was self-taught after he left Verrocchio. Next slide. And I want you to talk about our models now. I'm going to spend the last part of the talk about the models and what we can learn from their lives. So Da Vinci, no question, the world's greatest biomedical engineer of all time, and probably the greatest right brain, left brain person who was able to fuse these into a whole career of different types of roles. And so there was a gentleman named Michael J. Gelb who wrote a book a few years ago called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. He's a UVA professor in their B school. He walked in Da Vinci's shoes for a whole year. I think Da Vinci only moved 200 miles from where he died 200 miles from where he was born. So he went through most of France, Milan, up to France, where he passed in the court of Francis I there, and read everything and tracked down all those 7,000 pages of manuscripts and all the different codexes that are around the world that have his collected works bundled. And he began to see that Da Vinci left clues about how to think like Da Vinci. Next slide, click again. And he came up with the fact that this guy had a multiple career path. So you can do multiple things in your life if you have the time. Inventor, painter, sculptor. Actually, he was even a wedding planner. He would do art shows. He would do great pageantry on the side to make money. He was an athlete too. Next slide. And he came up with a list of things he found from Da Vinci's writings, the Da Vincian principles that he could glean from all those texts. Curiosity, an insatiable, curious approach to life, unrelenting quest for continuous learning. So Walter Isaacson, in his great biography on Da Vinci, said he was the most curious man in the world's history. And no question, you look at the volumes of just notes and notes and notes, and I'll share those with you, ideas, drawings. The next thing to be thinking about, demonstratione, a commitment to test knowledge through experience. Only could use experience as a test. Refining your senses, very much about that. And he offers examples of how Leonardo would tell you how to train your senses, sensazione. You would go into a room in the morning, one of his rooms, his studies, sit at a table and look out a window and close his eyes for a few minutes and then open them and look and try to determine what he had not seen on his first look. And he would find new colors in the trees, or a bird in the tree he didn't see, or a different shade in a cloud. And so he didn't have tools, these instruments that we carry around in our pockets. He had to refine his senses, and no one did the work like Da Vinci. Sfumato, going up in smoke, willingness to embrace ambiguity and challenge. The blending of arts and science, so-called whole brain thinking, which is right and left brain. He cultivated grace. Grace was really important to be cultivated. And connessione, a recognition and appreciation for all the interconnectedness of all things, nature to man, man to nature, building systems thinking. Next slide. So some examples. Very much the engineer and the mathematician understood the whole thing of vanishing points, of where points in the distance all converge. And he used that to be sure that when he painted or drew objects, they were in appropriate proportion based on their proximity to the front of the screen, so to speak. Next slide. And this is one of many sheets, 7,000 pages I mentioned. So he would walk the streets, not with my sketchbook, but with a set of parchment papers and a graphite pencil, just jotting down everything that would come to mind. In the middle of this sheet, there's a design of a house there, but there's all kind of other stuff. Thinking about music he was going to play that night. There's a guy playing a flute. We could go forever looking at this. There's a design for a tunnel in there. I mean, this guy's brain was like nonstop. And so strong recommendation, bring a book, carry something around with you you can jot down notes in all the time when things come to mind. Don't just keep it on your bedstand, take it with you. Next, and these are thought models too that help you figure things out. And of course, we know his great mind led to creation of a number of things, both good and bad. These are weapons of war here. Next slide. Or imagining flight machines. And the Da Vinci Museum in Florence a few years ago, to acknowledge his birthday, actually had some engineers build some of these things to show that they could actually work. You could actually fly in some of these things that he had designed. Amazing. He wrote backwards. Primarily, he didn't want you to read his writing, and made it hard for you to do that. You'd have to look at this in a mirror. Next slide. Some say he wrote right to left because he was a lefty, and he would smudge with that ink if he wrote in the correct direction. Amazing person. So great right-left brain. Let's talk about another example, a Harvard Med School example, Arthur Guyton. There's a great book called Inventing Art, written by all of his postdoctoral students, that talked about his legacy around take adversity plus imagination and you get discovery. Guyton was born in 1919 in Oxford, Mississippi, the same year that Nat King Cole was born in Montgomery, Alabama, the same year Jackie Robinson was born in Cairo, Georgia. How about that? And he had a three-dimensional genius vision, very much like Da Vinci. These guys could see things before they even made them. He built sailboats, motorized cars. And then you'll see later he built, as he became a medical student, he devised the first pressure transducer for research in building C when he was doing research at HMS. He designed a number of things that he never got patents for. He didn't believe he should get patents or make money from this. And so he finished Oxford, University of Mississippi, summa cum laude, all-American tennis player, came to HMS, finished quite high in his class, and was accepted by Edward Churchwell, the great surgical educator and leader at the Mass General Surgical Program in the early 30s. While on that ward service, he married his loving wife, Ruth. Ruth was a Wellesley woman. While on service and being so excited about being a surgical intern, saw everything, they worked every other night, contracted polio, which was unfortunately endemic on some of those wards, and paralyzed him from the legs down. So many would say that's the end of your career. You're going to go back home to Mississippi and just sit on the porch. No, not this genius. Went back to Mississippi and built a world famous cardiac physiology program, and one of the great textbooks in physiology ever written, Guyton's textbook of physiology, and began using that three-dimensional genius to do cardiovascular research and to do invention and discovery and building and a host of things. Designed the first electric hoist, designed the first electric wheelchair, got a presidential citation from Eisenhower about this wheelchair, gave the patent away to companies. Designed his own concrete home because there were tornadoes down there. He didn't want a wooden home, one story, giant halls because he had a wheelchair in there, and had notions about cooling the house with water on the roof during the summer. Next slide. So three-dimensional thinking. Also, one big rule, you had to make everything in the house. He had 10 kids. And virtually all of them finished University of Mississippi, and they all, virtually all came to Harvard Med School. And so I'm sure George would quote each one. I knew Robert Guyton, who was a couple of years ahead of me, who was a surgical resident when I was a med student there at the Mass General, and his brother Steve, who was an intern in surgery. He was finished HMS, and a host of other brothers and sisters. Here they're on an electric car that they built with their father, Otts, that's his nickname, supervision. You had to make your own stuff. I'm told by Robert that when they had issues with their equipment at the house, they had to fix the stuff themselves, whether it be the refrigerators, the ovens and the like. Next slide. So this is the wheelchair, and then his great contribution to cardiac physiology is his control system model of the whole circulatory system on the left. That's 1972. That's his life's work right there. Next slide. Lastly, Tom McMahon. I'll move quickly here. Tom was my mentor and was the head of the applied physics division at Harvard University, and was a writer and aeronautical engineer. So double thinking. Next slide. Wrote books. There were amazing fictional books that included fictional characters of fictitious characters, but also historical scientists that he put in funny positions. Great humorist. First novel he wrote was during the year he obtained his PhD in aeronautical engineering. His first novel came out, and it was tongue-in-cheek, Principles of American Nuclear Chemistry, in the title, a novel. It was a novel, not about that. It was about the activities of the scientists in the Los Alamos, the kind of activities they had, sexual and otherwise, that took place while they were building the bomb. And then other books that came out. The Rosenthal Award book, The Loving Little Egypt, was actually turned into an off-Broadway play. This came out in 1987. It was about a young kid who was blind and was a genius in the 19-teens, 20s, who could go to went to the top of a telephone pole and figured out a way, almost prescient in his mind, to connect all little kids like him all around the world to talk at the same time to each other, like the internet, and blocked everybody else out. So just an amazing, brilliant guy who in the mornings would write these books and then would pedal his way from Lexington, Massachusetts, to his lab at Harvard University, where I met him doing cardiac research. Next slide. So Tom allowed this very whimsical side of his brain to help inform him on a number of things that he was working on around pure science. He was very much interested in running, and was asked by the Harvard University president to create a running track that would have less injuries. So he started studying running, and he would learn everything, become an expert in that area of physiology. And he realized that if you wanted to know about running, you had to take all types of running, running up straight, running crouched. When you run crouched, he found out that it actually put less force from the track to your head. So it actually less impact to the head, to the body when you ran crouch, but a much more energy cost. It's harder to run when you're running like Groucho Marx. Next slide. So it's called Groucho running, as he studied all types of running. And this was in the journal. This was in a major journal of applied physiology. Tom having fun, but also learning at the same time. Next slide. So he wrote a number of things, and he studied all types of different subjects. As he was challenged to do the track, he studied running and wrote the definitive book, Muscles and Locomotion, that still is considered a major scientific piece. And he came up with the usual idea of using strobe lights to look at things closely rather than coming up with equations first, observations first. So he had his runners run on different surfaces. He assumed that there was some intermediate material between a very stiff track like asphalt, where you spent little time going down, deflecting your down going vertically, and you spent more time translating force forward, as opposed to a very trampoline or giving track like pillows, where you would spend a lot of time going down, but your stride length would be much longer because it would give you restorative energy and push your stride length. So he came up with an intermediate Young's modulus between the two of these, and that became the Harvard track. Next slide. And that track was installed and is still there, and other universities had him actually come up with a track for them. The important thing is the Harvard times got better by 3%, and injuries went down by 60%, but all the other runners' times improved too. So Temple still beat Harvard in the races. So funny as it is. Next slide. Next slide. One of the last things he did was pure science, interested in the Jesus lizard. How did it run across water? So he got a grad student, got a grant, went down to Brazil, brought a whole bunch of them back to the lab, and did strobe light experiments watching them run across water. Observations first, equations second. And in doing so, he realized that this lizard had such a large webbed foot and had such force of impact in the water. When he pulled his foot out of the water, he created an air pocket he could stand on for a few milliseconds as he ran across the water. When Tom looked at what the forces required to do that for a human would be, it would shatter the human femur. So it couldn't be done by humans, but he understood the physiology of this amazingly. Last slide. Click forward on me there. So I'm going to end by saying that creativity informs science and math. Creativity informs engineering and design. It is really important for us to look at carefully and examine what are those things that we can be creative in. Everybody's different. Writing, prose, drawing, sketching, sculpture, but we all have something there that we need to mind and develop and learn from. And so there are a number of things that are now out there pushing that as really a major part of education, whether it be art science collaborations towards innovation or art science communities in collaboration, the Media Lab at MIT being a great example of that. And the life science and engineering program, the biodesign program created by a classmate of mine, Paul Yock at Stanford, another great example of the blending of creativity, arts, and science to make humankind better. So that's my talk. I hope that was interesting and engaging. I'll leave you at the St. Patrick's on Fifth Avenue, Joan, and open for any questions at this point.
Thank you for that. It was truly wonderful. And the Q&A is open for anyone in this webinar, but I want to start in a space in combining part of what you said with what you do, and what you do in your role at Vanderbilt, because you do so many different things. And
yeah, I'll tell you where I use this a lot. I use the thought models a lot.
okay.
So if I'm giving a challenge between some administrative problem that maybe involves students or faculty or students or staff or whatever it might be, you'll see me pull out the drawing pad and I'll begin to then sketch out the different challenges. What are the issues? Who owns them? And as I sketch out this model of who owns what and what are the issues, forces, actions required, there becomes a set of activities in this brain that begins to organize a set of possible solutions from that. So it really helps me with that. In a complex patient, you'll see me on the weekend sit down, I'll put Mr. So-and-so in the center of a circle. I begin to then pull out all of the complexity of his medical problems and isolate them into organ systems around him. And from doing that, all of a sudden, things that were not clear, there's all of a sudden clarity about what I might need to do or what the actual issues are that need to be addressed.
As you talk about that, and I know as we've gone through these past interesting couple of years between COVID and George Floyd and all of the other things that have gone on and your role at Vanderbilt and some of the things that you've created, has this kind of thinking been applied to what you have done?
Absolutely. Let's take I was watching the movie Hidden Figures. I'm reading the book too. You're very much familiar with this. These are the women from historically Black universities, Wilberforce, Hampton, and Prairie View, mathematicians who helped Mercury and Apollo astronauts get up and get down, but they were not acknowledged initially. They were anonymous till the story came out. Well, after looking at that and sitting downstairs, reflecting in my man cave, my thought cave, you got to find your place where you can think too, Joan. It dawned on me, well, what about all these people that have worked at Vanderbilt in staff positions for decades and decades that have led to the growth and majesty of this place that no one's acknowledged? So I went back and started, and then the archetypical example popped in my head, Vivian Thomas. Now, everybody knows about Vivian Thomas, but think about who he was. It's the same type of situation. He was a worker, a janitor who was elevated into a lab researcher by Arthur Blaylock, who realized this guy had three-dimensional visual genius too. So I spent a whole year talking to people around this large 20,000 person medical center, and we began having yearly Hidden Figures programs where we would identify 4 people, posthumous or people alive, not doctors, but either nurses or staff who contributed mightily to the growth of this place that no one knew anything about. And we would honor them publicly, award, and create a wall of fame where their pictures and what they've contributed sits at Vanderbilt. So that's just one example right there, where once again, crazy Andre thinking, that's what my wife would call it, allowed me to come up with something that I would not have otherwise have thought of.
And to honor those.
And to honor those.
To
There's
honor
some
those.
amazing stories, Joan. I could go for hours till stories you would start crying about if I were to share them. I'll send those to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's the ways in which, as you talk about those stories, the ways in which all of us have this capacity to contribute.
Yes.
Those contributions are not always recognized, but all of us have that ability. All of, as you said, something to sort of paraphrase about creativity, you don't have to buy it. It's there.
It's there. It's exactly
and
right.
This capacity to contribute. My last question, and it's coming from somebody that you might know. You've talked about the creative process and its application to work and the inspiration for your work. Can you talk a bit about the pleasure that you gain from this process and the benefits to you?
Right. Wow. I think, let's go back to this time. This has been a terrible time in the history of our world the last 2 years, right? Let's just be frank. And we've talked about this, Joan, and the stress and the mental illness that's become so rampant in African-American and in many communities, particularly BIPOC communities, where there's nothing like sitting down at my drawing board in my man cave, working on a project or doing the next bit of drawing for a project I'm going to do. That then takes me away. Even when I do this briefly during these bad lectures or meetings, it transports you away, transiently, away from that moment of prominent stress that allows you then to re-engage it in a different way, in a more restful way. So I think it offers me a path of sanity, but a path of new ideas. But also it opens up another world too. I did mention, so within the world I live in, there's certainly physicians and surgeons and there's medical administrators, but there's another whole world of people who do men's dress and write in men's fashion that I'm also engaged with, which opens another whole set of vistas and ideas.
You know, as you say that, and I think part of what I'm hearing from you is that oftentimes we get so engaged in our work that we don't allow ourselves to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
To do
Absolutely.
that,
Sure.
that lifts us up.
Yeah. So you need to intentionally include this in your life. Yeah. Yeah.
Very much so.
Let me show you, just right behind you here on the wall, there's a sketch of Jack Kennedy. That's mine. And there's a sketch of my father. You'll see in the frame there in the blue and the gold frame. That's Dad. And so for me to look at something that's him that I drew, the double meaning. That's what he looked like, and but it's something I wrought. So it has even greater meaning and greater impact on me, my soul, how I view the world.
But it's also acknowledging that we do none of this alone. I mean, what
Absolutely.
I'm hearing, none of this is alone.
No, absolutely.
Be they here in front of us from the past or others, we are very much interconnected.
Absolutely.
In this space. I thank you. I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for sharing your vision, for your encouraging us to be all that we can be and to bring that creativity forward. I thank you for your friendship.
Same here. Take care. Great work up there, Joan. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. It's now my honor to present the 2022 Diversity Award recipients and to introduce their nominators. These awards were established to recognize faculty and staff from Harvard Medical School and Harvard School of Dental Medicine who've made significant achievements in moving Harvard toward being a more diverse and inclusive community. An advisory committee with representatives from across the Harvard medical and dental community carefully reviewed and discussed each nomination and unanimously recommended the following individuals for this year's awards. The recipients will be introduced by their nominators in pre-recorded videos. It's my pleasure to honor and acknowledge Dr. Kevin Churchwell, President and Chief Executive Officer of Boston Children's Hospital, as the recipient of the 2022 Lifetime Achievement Diversity Award. Dr. Churchwell will be introduced by Dr. Valerie Ward, HMS Assistant Professor of Radiology, Senior Vice President, Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Director of the Sandra L. Fenwick Institute for Pediatric Health Equity and Inclusion, and Director of the Office of Health Equity and Inclusion at Boston Children's Hospital. Dr. Ward.
It is an honor and a privilege to nominate Dr. Kevin Churchwell for the Harvard Medical School's Diversity Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. Kevin Churchwell has been an advocate, a visionary leader, and an innovator in equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives, programs, and sustainable foundation building for pediatric health and improving the health outcomes of our children, patient families, and communities that our hospital serves. He's done this work locally at Boston Children's, nationally at other medical centers, and essentially impacted the world because Dr. Churchwell created 3 of the 12 hospitals' offices of health equity and inclusion across the nation and Canada that comprise the Pediatric Health Equity Collaborative. It is this work with which my colleagues who co-nominated Dr. Churchwell with me have said has really made a difference. Dr. Jean Emmons wrote, Dr. Churchwell's dedication to building permanent structures and sustainable programs to improve pediatric health and inclusion has really made this intentional work transform pediatrics. Ms. Maxine Milstein has written that today's award is fitting, really a fitting testament of Dr. Churchwell's legacy in EDI, leadership, advocacy, and collaboration locally and nationally throughout his career. And Dr. Alan Leitner has written that Dr. Churchwell has truly embedded the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion into our hospital's culture and at other hospitals. And this is a measure of his tremendous impact and leadership across the nation. And so with this, I'd like to conclude by saying thank you, Dr. Churchwell, for being a visionary leader and being a true champion for pediatric health equity and inclusion, for creating our Boston Children's Office of Health Equity and Inclusion, and now our Boston Children's Institute, the Fenwick Institute for Pediatric Health Equity and Inclusion, all of which are intentional and sustainable initiatives to improve the health of the patients and families we serve.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. And thank you, Dean Daly and Dean Reed, for this honor, and also for the selection committee for their work. You know, Lifetime Achievement Awards usually indicate one has fulfilled a significant purpose in a piece of work. I, of course, don't feel that way. There's still much to do around diversity, inclusion, and disparities. You know, I just want to make one point about Dr. Andre's lecture. Well, actually 2 points. One, the first point is that, yes, he is my brother. And so you're not seeing a mirror image there. But another point about his lecture is that you can interpret his lecture as a talk really about the importance of diversity of thought, diversity of individuals, and the diversity that creates an evolution in science, evolution in medicine, evolution in art. And so thank you, Andre, for that talk. You know, the times we are living in call out for the importance of the work and the opportunity around inclusion, diversity, and the work around health inequity. The deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor galvanized the nation and brought in a new and an entire generation of leaders to this work. This generation is creating a movement that is different actually from the work in my generation and those that preceded us. An example of that is the work of Dr. Amos, the first African-American to chair a department at Harvard Medical School, received his MA in 1947, his PhD in 1952 from Harvard Medical School. Different times that describe, really actually the times that describe my own parents and how they grew up and what they were a part of. and how they directed change. They directed change really in how they changed my brothers and sisters, my siblings, and recognizing the importance of the work in diversity and inclusion. You know, we never really talked about it in our house. We never really had that lecture, you know, when you arrive, this is what you should do. It was actually just expected. It was part of the playbook to do your best, make a difference, and work to stand, as I like to call it, in the breach. I think Dr. Amos would probably agree with that view. He could probably describe that the long view, the long arc of moral justice. He was a fellow in the Academy of Arts and Sciences and the Institute of Medicine. He received the Harvard Centennial Medal. In today's vernacular, Dr. Amos was a really bad dude. He saw the future and the need to develop the next generation of diverse scientists, clinicians, physician scientists. His work with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation helped in the creation of the next generation. But there is still much work to do. And let's all plan to be a part of it. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you, Dr. Churchwell. And congratulations on receiving the 2022 Diversity Lifetime Achievement Award. Our next recipient is Dr. Enrique Caballero, Associate Professor of Medicine and Faculty Director of International Innovation Programs in the Office of External Education at Harvard Medical School. He works in the Department of Medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Dr. Caballero will be introduced by Dr. David Roberts, Dean of External Education at HMS.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to introduce to you Dr. Enrique Caballero, this year's awardee of the Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award here at HMS. Dr. Caballero is one of my colleagues in the Office for External Education, and he is an amazing clinician, educator, researcher, and advocate. He is someone who has always strived to improve the diabetes and general care of underserved populations, both in this country and around the world. And here with us in the Office for External Education, Dr. Caballero has been building amazing programs, not just on diabetes, but beyond. And he is working across all of our programs, including online learning, hybrid programs, in-person programs. And I really want to congratulate Dr. Caballero for his decades-long contribution to not only the HMS community, but he previously was at Joslin Diabetes Center and now at Brigham and Women's. And I just want to thank him for all that he has done to build a more sustainable, inclusive, and wonderfully healthy community of populations across both our area and the world at large. Thank you for all you do, Enrique, and congratulations.
Wow, what a moment. Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Dr. Reed and Dr. Daly for this honor. I'm really humbled, especially because this is an award in honor of such a remarkable physician, scientist, and humanitarian. Learn something new and do something good every day. This is what my parents taught me early on in my career. My parents were school teachers. My mom specialized in kids with learning disabilities, and my dad, who was also a psychologist, who specialized in children with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and other conditions. And I've been so fortunate to have been able to implement these principles throughout my career. You know, soon after I arrived at Harvard from Mexico City, where I was born, raised, and did my initial training, I learned about the huge racial disparities in diabetes care. And I therefore decided to work in the development of culturally and linguistically oriented programs, primarily for the Latinx Hispanic community. But later on, I learned that there are many other groups that are relegated based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, disabilities, and many other characteristics. And I was then very fortunate to get the opportunity to develop professional education programs that address inequities, both domestically and across the world. It's been a fascinating journey. It's been full of learning experiences. I have had many success stories, but also there's many drawbacks and difficulties. I just want to thank all my mentors, collaborators, colleagues, students, and friends who have been part of this amazing journey with me. I also want to thank my family, my wife, and our 4 amazing daughters who continue to inspire me every single day. I am so honored, so proud to be a member of the Harvard community. I just know that I will continue to do my best to learn something new and to do something good for others every single day. Thank you very much for this honor.
Thank you, Dr. Caballero, and congratulations on receiving the Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award. Our next recipient is Dr. Joshua C. Ellis, an instructor in emergency medicine at Harvard Medical School and director of recruitment in the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center Emergency Medicine Residency. Dr. Ellis will be introduced by Dr. Richard Wolf, Associate Professor of Emergency Medicine at HMS and Chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine at BIDMC. Dr. Wolf.
Good afternoon. It's with great pride that I've been asked to present Dr. Josh Ellis, who is a recipient of the Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award. Dr. Ellis graduated from Howard University in 2016 and was then selected to train at the highly competitive program at the Mayo Clinic in emergency medicine. While there, he was recognized as a resident educator of the year and graduated at the top of his class. In 2019 at Beth Israel Deaconess, we were fortunate enough to recruit him into our educational fellowship. He excelled in that role, mentoring students and residents and making us aware of the problems we were having in terms of faculty diversification and the reasons for this. He has gone on to serve as a mentor and role model for medical students around the country and has been a cornerstone in our efforts to improve our department. Because of these efforts, he was appointed as Director of Residency Diversity Recruitment on graduation, and he's begun his remarkable academic career by an early publication of the New England Journal of Medicine, Interviewed While Black, which describes the experience that applicants of color have when they look at positions in non-diversified faculty. So it is with great pleasure and pride I present Dr. Ellis. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for the introduction, Dr. Wolf. Honestly, this is so surreal to be here receiving this award amongst Joan Reed, Dr. Churchwell. Absolutely surreal. Over the past few weeks and months, I've had the chance to be able to reflect over what this award means to me. And honestly, it was really difficult to find the words to express the gratitude that I have in receiving this, but also just the platform and the work environment that's allowed me to do what I love, to pursue my life's calling. I grew up as a poor, gay, biracial, half Black, half Mexican kid in Texas. And there were parts of my life where I never felt like I'd fit in entirely anywhere. And really, there are probably going to be a few times in my life where my whole self will be the majority in the room. And one of the more challenging parts of this is I remember as a child feeling the need to sacrifice one of these identities, whether I'd be too Black, not Black enough, too gay, not gay enough, in order to pursue higher education and more specifically medical education. And now I can truly say I've made it my life's work so that no one else will feel this way, so that it's very personal for me. It's not a tax. I do it for free. I love my work and I'm enjoying it so much. I'm so proud of it. And now to be paid for it, to be respected for it, to be awarded for it, I truly can't be more honored and appreciative of this moment right now. And so thank you, Dr. Reed, everyone else inside the Harvard Medical School facility, and thank you for the other awardees for allowing me to share the stage with you. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis, and congratulations on this recognition as a Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award recipient. Our next recipient is Dr. Christopher D. Harvey, Associate Professor of Neurobiology at Harvard Medical School, and he will be introduced by Dr. Michael Greenberg, Chair, and Nathan Marsh Pusey, Professor of Neurobiology at HMS. Dr. Greenberg.
Hello. It is my pleasure to congratulate Chris Harvey for receiving this year's Harold Amos Award for his many contributions to the PhD program in neuroscience, also called the PIN program. Harold Amos and I were colleagues in the microbiology department back in the late 1980s, and I know he especially valued graduate education, and I'm quite sure he would agree that Chris is most deserving of this award. Chris took over as chair of the PIN Admissions Committee in the fall of 2015. In his 7 years as chair of admissions, he's done an exceptional job of improving our admissions process to make it more transparent and equitable. With dedication and a passion for equity, Chris has made lasting changes to the PIN admissions process. Chris has been a major driver of expanded recruitment activities that have resulted in a significant increase in the diversity of graduate students in PIN. We are extremely fortunate to have Chris in the Department of Neurobiology. He is an exceptional neuroscientist whose evidence-based approaches aimed at improving the PIN admissions process have had a substantial impact on the diversity of our student body. For these and other contributions, he was nominated by both our students and faculty to receive the Harold Amos Award. Please join me in congratulating Chris.
Thank you, Dean Reed, and thank you, Mike, for that introduction. I'm sincerely honored to receive this award and deeply touched by the nominations from my colleagues. It has been inspiring over the past years to see the growing efforts in the program in neuroscience and the Department of Neurobiology to increase diversity and inclusion in our community. Many of us realize that one of the fastest and critical ways to affect change is through the graduate program. A main emphasis has been to update the admissions procedures and goals for the program in neuroscience. So we have aimed to make diversity one of the core values of the program and to ensure that applications are evaluated following the principles of equitable and holistic review. I'm happy to report that bringing this focus to the forefront, implementing standardized review procedures, and leading discussions amongst the admissions committee about the importance of diversity have already led to meaningful changes and an improvement in diverse representation among our graduate students. It has been really heartening to see how members of PIN have rallied around these ideas. I want to particularly mention that the inspiration for these ideas came largely from current students in the program, especially the leadership of the underrepresented scholars in neuroscience, and also from Tari Tan, the Director of Education, whom you will hear from next. These efforts have also been accelerated by support from the PIN leadership, John Assad, David Ginty, Susan Jackson, and Karen Harmon, the leadership in the Department of Neurobiology, Mike Greenberg and Soha Ashrafi, and leadership in the Division of Medical Sciences, especially Roz Siegel. I sincerely hope this is just the beginning and that these efforts, with the attention garnered by this award, will grow and permeate other areas of recruitment, even beyond graduate education. Thank you again for this great honor.
Thank you, and congratulations, Dr. Harvey, on receiving the Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award. Our fourth recipient of the Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award is Dr. Carolyn Tan, Director of Education in Neurobiology and lecturer in the program in neuroscience at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Tan will be introduced by Dr. Rachel Wilson, the Joseph B. Martin Professor of Basic Research in the field of neurobiology at HMS.
Hello, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Carolyn Tan, the Director of Education in the Department of Neurobiology. Tari has had a key role in increasing the diversity of our graduate student cohort. She has worked tirelessly to make personal contacts with potential graduate student applicants from a very wide range of backgrounds. And she's met one-on-one with many of these students to get to know them as people, to learn about their accomplishments and their aspirations and their concerns. She has opened my eyes to issues that I was unaware of that were hindering our ability to recruit a diverse cohort. For example, making me realize that many students don't know that they will receive a stipend and all their fees and tuition will be fully covered by our program. She's also been responsible, working with Dr. Bob Data, for developing from scratch the first post-baccalaureate program at HMS, which is specifically devoted to providing research experiences in neuroscience. This program is targeted towards students from underrepresented backgrounds, and Tari has worked hard to ensure that each one of these students is placed in a lab that provides a strong and supportive training environment with lots of opportunities for learning and mentorship. Finally, Tari has done a lot behind the scenes to support students from all kinds of backgrounds once they're part of our department. Part of this is just making herself available for one-on-one conversations whenever a student needs support or advice, and I think this is enormously useful. I think I can speak for a whole department when I say that Tari has played a great role in making us a more supportive and welcoming place for everybody. And at the same time, Tari has pushed us to achieve excellence in our teaching and our learning and our research. I just want to say thanks, Tari. This award is the least that we can do to recognize you.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to everyone here for this honor and the opportunity to highlight some of the work that my colleagues and I have been doing to try to make neuroscience more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. So central to everything that I do towards that goal are my incredibly talented and amazing students, as well as my incredible colleagues who value and prioritize this work. So I really wanted to take this time to acknowledge them here. So first, I want to give a shout out to our inaugural cohort of PINBAC scholars, the neuroscience post-bac program that Rachel mentioned in her remarks. So our scholars are Nigel Hunter, Jason Lara Jimenez, Elisa Rojas Palato, Bernice Chavez, David Guarin, Eric Garcia, and Jabari McGinnis. You all are doing such a fantastic job, and I am so proud of you, so keep up the great work. I want to thank my post-bac program colleagues, Bob Dada, Sheila Thomas, Karina Gonzalez Herrera, to all the PIs who are posting PINBAC scholars in your labs, thank you for your generosity, and to all the program and neuroscience faculty and students who are mentoring those scholars. You've all made this program a success because of your commitment, and none of this would be possible without your support, so thank you. And finally, my deepest gratitude to Mike Greenberg, Soha Ashrafi, and to all of my colleagues in the Department of Neurobiology who have galvanized our community to build a more inclusive academy in which all trainees can thrive. I truly could not do my job without being in such a supportive environment. As further evidenced by my colleague Chris's award here today as well, and congrats, Chris, the Neurobiology Department here at HMS is a truly special place. I currently sit in the former office of department luminaries and champions of diversity in education, Edwin Fershpan and David Potter, and I often think of them in that space. Their commitment to diversity in education lives on through our departmental initiatives like PINBAC, the admissions processes, all of the things that we're doing. And so I'm truly honored to be able to continue their legacy in my own small way. So thank you again so much, and thanks for giving me this platform to be able to showcase the amazing things that so many of our students and faculty and staff are doing here at HMS.
Thank you, Dr. Tan, and congratulations on this recognition, the Harold Amos Faculty Diversity Award. Our first recipient of the 2022 Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award, Paula S. Atkinson. Paula is the Player Engagement and Outreach Project Coordinator for the Football Players Health Study at Harvard University and the Clinical and Translational Science Center at Harvard Medical School. Ms. Atkinson will be introduced by Mr. Trevor Bates. Mr. Bates is a research assistant in the Football Players Health Study and a Clinical Translational Science Center. Mr. Bates.
Good afternoon. Today, I have the distinct honor of introducing this year's recipient of the Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award. I'm proud to announce that this year's winner is a coworker and a dear friend of mine, Paula Atkinson. Within our work at the Football Players Health Study and throughout the broader Boston community, Paula consistently thrives to help build a more diverse, inclusive, and educated society. At work, she provides research-based health information to our cohort of former NFL players to help educate them on health challenges and solutions. Through her social media platforms and amongst our peers, Paula continuously shares resources and illustrates ways to get involved to help marginalized communities, especially for social justice movements and around holidays like Indigenous Peoples Day, Juneteenth, and many more. Paula continues to grow and inspire all those around her to be more involved and conscious of their thoughts, words, and actions. This award is granted to an individual who continues to build Harvard and our community into a more diverse and inclusive space, and I cannot think of anyone more deserving than her. Paula, thank you for your initiative, actions, and hard work. And most importantly, congratulations.
Wow, Trevor nearly has me in tears, but I wanted to sort of first thank my department and colleagues that I work with, like Trevor, who engage with me in this really important work. You know, the majority of us spend 50% of our waking hours at work, and the work that we do does not exist in a vacuum. What's happening in the world affects our lives, our safety, our humanity in different ways, and we carry that with us to work and outside of work. What I found is that when we promote inclusivity, equity, and belonging in our workplace through things like value setting, difficult conversations, and sharing our backgrounds, our cultures, our passions, resources, and education, we not only create a stronger community, stronger research, but we also create a better world. And I hope that moving forward, we all can strive to create Harvard Medical School workplaces that acknowledge and honor this. So thank you so much for this incredible honor, for this award. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone and to the other awardees. Congratulations.
Ms. Atkinson, congratulations on receiving the Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award. Our final recipient of the 2022 Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award is Ms. Judith Vance. Ms. Vance is Director of Human Resources in the Department of Human Resources at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. Ms. Vance will be introduced by Dr. Brian Swan, Assistant Professor of Oral Health Policy and Epidemiology, and Interim Assistant Dean of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at Harvard School of Dental Medicine. Dr. Swan.
Hello. Judith Vance is a prime example of one who demonstrates and encourages equity within the workforce at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. Over a considerable amount of time, HSDM has had one of the lower rates for diversity in certain areas, but that exception is among staff and administration, which is the area in which Judith is responsible for. 45% of the staff, is diverse. Judith is assisting the dean in leading the development of the strategic plan. She is the spokesperson and co-director of the community building segment. And this segment is building diversity and inclusion, equity, belonging by strengthening relationships, and is paramount and one of the best places to start to sustain policy and develop it for the strategic plan. In my opinion, she is the best model presently at HSDM. She saves jobs, creates jobs for staff of color, as well as people from a variety of lifestyles and backgrounds. She resolves disagreements with grace and respect. She is an encourager and creates an inroad to the dean because she has proven her trustworthiness. Right now, she and our new dean are the internal glue that give HSDM hope in the area of diversity. It is my honor and privilege to congratulate and introduce Mrs. Judith Vance as this year's recipient of the Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Dr. Swan and those who nominated me for the Sharon Claiborne Diversity Award and the selection committee. It's an honor to be considered amongst the ranks of someone like Sharon Claiborne, who was remembered for her dedication at the Harvard Medical School and its students. This nomination was really a work of a team effort around building community at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine under the strategic leadership of our Dean Gianobili. This was a team effort, and I really feel like I've been blessed to be able to work with such a dedicated group of individuals. You know, Harvard for me, I always feel is like a community where there's just seeds that are being planted. And together we're creating these incredible programs and initiatives that continue to grow. Even 2 years ago, a group of individuals of color came together organically to celebrate Juneteenth in an event hosted by Dr. Joan Reed and Dr. Dean Daly. Today, that group of individuals is known as the Black Staff Caucus. And together we have launched a mentoring program and a speaker series around advancement for staff, along with many other activities. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by so many talented individuals making a difference every day. When I think about the speaker today, Dr. Churchwell, and he talked about, creativity sometimes comes from nothing, or I would say maybe the unexpected. I want to congratulate my fellow award recipients today and say thank you again to the committee for acknowledging these accomplishments and really the many others that have been achieved along the way. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vance, and congratulations on receiving the Sharon P. Claiborne Staff Diversity Award. I'm going to ask for all of our recipients to have a group photo, and so if you could turn on your cameras, that the people who know how to do that will make that happen. And if they will let me know when that is done, I would appreciate that. I would also say to the recipients, there's a lot going on in the chat with messages to all of you, and congratulations, and take a look at them. Your community, your family, Harvard and outside of Harvard are sharing in this celebration with you. Fantastic. It's been our honor to recognize these outstanding individuals and to pay tribute to their work. Through their vision and leadership, they've encouraged inclusion, changed culture, and helped set the tone for future efforts that support diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is not an easy task, but they've shown us that through creativity, innovation, and commitment, we can create a culture that is respectful and welcoming of all, a culture where we can fulfill our potential and ability to contribute. We're living in a constantly changing time, a time that's magnified the lack of diversity and equity in all sectors across our society. As we begin to reemerge to a new normal, it's important that we, as members of the Harvard community and the larger community, have a deeper resolve in our dedication to advancing science education and clinical care in ways that impact the health of everyone. In this increasingly diverse and rapidly changing society, we must be prepared to have a workforce that both represents and is sensitive to and embraces all in our community. It's important to understand that diversity is not just about race, ethnicity, not just about gender or sexual orientation or class or language or ability, disability, but the intersections. It's about all of us in one way or another. It's the richness of our diversity that brings us our strength. It's the richness of our diversity that makes us excellent.